Belinda and HarperAudio Australia present this unabridged recording of Come Rain or Shine, written by Tricia Stringer and read by Kate Hosking. The dedication reads, For My Dad. Chapter 1. Paula removed the protective hand she'd placed over the imperceptible bulge of her baby and lifted the magazine higher. The two women in the seats opposite had acknowledged her with quick smiles when they came in, but now they had forgotten that she was sharing the doctor's waiting room with them and their conversation had turned personal. "What will you do in the city?" one asked the other. "I hope I can get an office job. I'm pretty rusty, but I think I'll get something." "What about Pete? He's the one I'm worried about." Her voice wavered. "He's only ever known farming." "You've had some help from the counsellor, haven't you?" "Yes, but Pete is so hard to read. I'm on edge watching him all the time." "Surely you don't think he'd harm himself? Now that you've made the decision to leave, it must be a relief." Paula couldn't help a quick glance over the top of her magazine. Pete's wife took the tissue offered by her friend. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She had a neat, tidy appearance and could have been about 40, but it was hard to tell. Her face was taut and she looked worn out. "Yes and no. Pete still stews over it." The woman sobbed openly now. "He thinks we've failed." Her friend put an arm around her. "You haven't failed, Sal, but if it doesn't rain, what can you do?" Paula pressed herself into her chair, wishing she could disappear and give the women some privacy. Only last week, the front page of the city paper had shown a family leaving their farm after years of drought. The report came from another part of the state, and Dan had reassured her things weren't that bad here, but the women she'd just overheard must live somewhere in the local district. Then there were the Watsons, their neighbours to the east. They'd recently gone through bad times, and she'd initially assumed that was because of Ted's mismanagement, but Dan had explained it was a combination of things out of Ted's control, market fluctuations and the weather being the main offenders. "Paula?" She jumped and the magazine slipped from her fingers. "Sorry, I'm running a bit late today." Dr. Hunter stood at the door, smiling at her. Paula could feel the interest of the two women turn to her. Quickly, she bent to pick up her magazine, then jumped to her feet. The room spun. "Steady up." The doctor put his arm under hers. Paula clapped her hand over her mouth. "I'm going to be sick." At the sound of a vehicle, Rowena gripped the edges of the kitchen bench and took a deep breath. She let it out slowly, switched on the kettle and glanced back into the sunny eating area where her small round table was set for two. Her gaze focused on the letter she'd left by her plate. It was the reason she'd asked her nephew Dan to call in for lunch. How she was going to break the news to him she still wasn't sure, but the worry of it had kept her awake half the night. She moved through the arch into the little sunroom and sat down at the table, unable to resist the urge to pick the letter up and look at it again. Just when there was so much to look forward to, the past had come back to smack her in the face. How she wished Austin was home instead of interstate. She would have been tempted to jump in the car and drive the couple of hours to Adelaide to talk things over with him. It was all too complicated for a phone call, but she would talk to him once he was back. Austin had become her rock and her confidant over the 2 years since she'd met him through a mutual friend. After so many years on her own, at first she'd resisted the idea of marrying him and moving to Adelaide, but now that Dan was married and had someone to support him, Rowena had given in. She loved Austin and enjoyed sharing her life with him. No doubt some would think her foolish to marry at her time of life. She was approaching 57, but she wasn't one to dwell too much on what others thought. Dan and Paula's wedding day flicked through her mind. Even though it had been a struggle for the new bride, fresh from the city, to adapt to country life, they seemed happy. Rowena hoped Paula would cope with the looming bombshell. Perhaps a country girl would understand the situation better, but Dan had made his choice. There was a clang as the garden gate closed and footsteps crunched along the path. Rowena hurried to take the sausage rolls from the oven and put them on the table beside the sandwiches. She wanted to give Dan a decent lunch. It was another of the things she did from time to time just to make...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?